Ava sat on the edge of her creaky bed, the thin mattress sagging beneath her slight frame in her cramped one-room apartment in Brooklyn, New York. The calendar, tacked crookedly to the peeling wall, screamed June 1st in bold red numbers. Rent was due today, $900, and her bank account held a measly $4.37. Her hands trembled as she clutched the eviction notice taped to her front door, its stark black letters giving her 3 days to pay or leave. 3 days. No job, no family, no help. The last of her money had gone to a can of tuna for Milo, her small tabby cat, who now curled up beside her, purring softly despite the empty ache in Ava's stomach. She had never imagined it would come to this. Once, Ava had been a bright, ambitious student with dreams of becoming a nurse. At 17, her world shattered when her father died unexpectedly from a heart attack. Her mother, grieving and distant, remarried a year later and moved across the country to California, leaving Ava behind in Brooklyn with little more than a suitcase of clothes and a promise to stay in touch. College had been her lifeline, a path to a better future, but tuition costs piled up faster than she could manage. Scholarships dried up, and part-time jobs couldn't cover the gap. She dropped out after her first year, her dreams deferred indefinitely. A string of minimum-wage jobs followed, cashier, barista, retail clerk, but none lasted. Her latest job, stocking shelves at a corner store, ended when she twisted her ankle slipping on a wet floor. The injury wasn't severe, but it left her limping, unable to stand for long hours. Employers took one look at her and turned her away. She had spent weeks hobbling door to door, resumes in hand, begging for a chance, but no one wanted someone who could barely walk. Desperation forced her to sell what little she owned. Her phone, her laptop, even her favorite sweater from her grandmother, but the money vanished quickly, swallowed by bills and groceries. Now, she was down to a single dress, a few pairs of jeans, and Milo's food bowl. That morning, Ava had shuffled past a small diner on Flatbush Avenue, her stomach growling at the scent of fried eggs and coffee. She paused outside, catching snippets of conversation between two waitresses smoking by the door. "Girl, she made over $1,000 in one night," one said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Just by being nice to some guy at a bar. Can you believe it?" The other laughed, shaking her head. Ava's heart sank as the words settled into her. Something inside her broke, a fragile thread of hope snapping under the weight of her reality. Back in her apartment, Ava stood in front of her cracked mirror, staring at her reflection. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, her face pale and tired, with shadows under her eyes that seemed permanent now. She slipped into her best dress, a deep blue, knee-length number her grandmother had given her for her high school graduation. It was the only thing she hadn't sold, a relic of better days. Tears welled in her eyes as she smoothed the fabric over her hips. Just once, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. Just enough to pay rent. She grabbed her small purse, kissed Milo on the head, and walked out into the fading light of the evening. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the cracked sidewalks as Ava reached an old gas station on the edge of her neighborhood. It was a place she'd always avoided, known for late-night deals and shady characters. Men in expensive cars slowed down sometimes, their eyes scanning the street for desperate souls. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst through her ribs. Every step toward the gas station felt like plunging deeper into a dark tunnel with no way out. She stood near a flickering streetlight, her hands shaking, her broken heel wobbling beneath her. She tried to look confident, but her eyes darted nervously, betraying her fear. Then, a sound cut through the evening, a motorcycle engine, loud and guttural, revving as it approached. Ava turned, her breath catching as a bike pulled up beside her. The rider, dressed in a black leather jacket and a helmet, parked and swung his leg over the seat. He removed his helmet, revealing sharp green eyes and a face that looked both tired and kind, with faint stubble and a scar above his left eyebrow. He couldn't have been much older than her, maybe late 20s. You okay? He asked, his voice low but steady. Ava straightened, forcing a smile. I'm fine. He looked her over, not in a predatory way, but with a quiet understanding. He saw the fear behind her fake smile, the desperation in her trembling hands, the broken heel on her only pair of nice shoes. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded $20 bill, holding it out to her. Go home, he said simply. She laughed bitterly, her voice cracking. That won't even cover my light bill. I'm not offering charity, he said, stepping closer. His eyes held hers, steady and sincere. I'm offering a job. Ava blinked, caught off guard. What kind of job? I fix bikes, he said, nodding toward his motorcycle. I need someone to help with paperwork, calls, parts orders. You look smart. You want something real, or just temporary survival? She stared at him, stunned. Why would you trust me? You don't even know me. He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I've been there. His name was Logan. He told her his story later that night, over coffee at a 24-hour diner a few blocks away. He'd grown up in foster care, bouncing from home to home until he aged out at 18. Homeless for a year, he'd slept in alleys and subway stations until a biker took him under his wing, teaching him how to repair motorcycles. Now, Logan ran a small garage with a rusty sign that read J and Sons, though he had no sons, or any family, for that matter. The name was a tribute to the man who'd saved him. Ava started working the next day. The garage was a cluttered, grease-stained space filled with tools, bike parts, and the constant hum of engines. Her job was simple: answer phones, file invoices, order parts, and keep the books in order. The pay was modest, $500 a week, but it was clean, honest work. Her first paycheck went straight to her landlord, a gruff man with a perpetual scowl who took the money and eyed her suspiciously. You find a sugar daddy or something? He mocked, counting the bills. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The weeks turned into months. Ava's limp faded as her ankle healed, and she grew stronger, both physically and mentally. She learned the rhythm of the garage, the clank of wrenches, the smell of motor oil, the banter between Logan and his small crew of mechanics. She saved every penny she could, tucking it away in a coffee can under her bed. Milo, sensing the shift in her owner's mood, became more playful, batting at stray bolts Ava brought home from the garage. One chilly autumn day, Logan handed her a brochure for a community college nursing assistant program. It was a worn pamphlet, the edges curled from being handled. I figured maybe you're still dreaming, he said, his tone casual but his eyes searching. Ava's breath caught. She took the brochure, her fingers tracing the words, certified nursing assistant. I thought I'd buried that dream, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. He smiled, leaning against a workbench. Dig it back up. With Logan's encouragement, Ava enrolled. She worked at the garage during the day, her hands stained with ink from filing papers, and attended evening classes, her mind buzzing with medical terms and procedures. Life was grueling, long hours, little sleep, and the constant pressure of bills, but for the first time in years, it felt like she was moving forward. Then, one rainy spring evening, everything changed. Logan was riding home from a parts run when his bike skidded on a slick highway. A passing driver called 911, and he was rushed to the hospital with a fractured skull and internal injuries. He slipped into a coma, his condition critical. Ava was at the garage when she got the call. She dropped everything, her heart in her throat, and ran to the hospital. For 3 weeks, she barely left his side. She fed him through a tube when the nurses were too busy, read him old detective novels from the hospital gift shop, and held his hand, her thumb tracing circles over his knuckles. The doctors warned her he might not wake up. One night, exhausted and alone in the sterile hospital room, she leaned close and whispered, "You saved me, Logan." Now it's my turn. On the 22nd day, he woke up. His eyes fluttered open, and the first thing he saw was Ava, asleep in the chair beside his bed, her head resting on her folded arms. "I guess I owe you now," he said, his voice weak but laced with humor. She woke with a start, tears spilling down her cheeks as she smiled. "We're even." Recovery was slow, but Logan was stubborn. Ava helped him through physical therapy, bringing him soup and nagging him to take his meds. Their bond deepened, built on late-night talks and shared silences. 2 years later, Ava passed her nursing assistant exams. Logan was in the front row at the ceremony, clapping louder than anyone, his grin wide enough to light up the room. After the ceremony, Ava pulled him aside, still wearing her grandmother's blue dress, now slightly faded but carefully mended. "I'm still wearing this old thing," she said, smiling. "Still?" he teased, leaning against a tree outside the community college. "I thought you would have sold it by now." She looked into his green eyes, her heart steady for the first time in years. "I kept it for this day, because I need to tell you something." She took a deep breath. "That night at the gas station, I was going to sell myself. I was that desperate. And you bought me back." Logan's face softened, and he reached for her hand. "You were never lost, Ava. You just needed someone to remind you." They married the next spring in a small ceremony at a community park, surrounded by friends, co-workers, and Milo, who wore a tiny bow on his collar. Even Ava's landlord showed up, looking sheepish as he handed them an envelope, a rent refund, one after Logan sued him for illegal threats and emotional distress. The money went toward a deposit on a small house, just big enough for 2 people and a cat. Ava became a full-time nurse, working in a local clinic where she treated patients with the same compassion Logan had shown her. Logan expanded the garage into a community training center, teaching troubled teens how to fix bikes and rebuild their lives. Every evening, they rode his old motorcycle together, the wind whipping through their hair as they chased the sunset. All it took was one person who saw her worth when she'd forgotten it herself. And in that act of kindness, 2 lives were saved.